thank you so much to all of those who reached out and asked questions. They were really, really good questions, so I'm excited to answer those on camera for you. So our first question comes from a parent who has a 9-month-old and is asking for signs to look out for during their language development roughly around this time.
So, some signs to look out for in your 9 month old is if they respond to their name. So, if you call them, do they turn their head? Are they able to understand the word no? They might not like it, but if they're able to understand it, get what they want through using gestures. So, for example, if they want to be picked up, do they reach their arms out to you? Are they able to play social games with you like peekaboo? And can they babble and repeat sounds like da da da, ba ba ba? So these are just some signs to look out for in your 9 month old, and this is all online in through the Early Ability City of Toronto Communication Checklist. I will link it in the description.
Our next question comes from a parent who has a 13-month-old and is saying that their little one has started screaming at the top of their lungs. They've noticed that they mostly do it while they're tired and asking to go to sleep or if they're feeling hungry, and wants to know when their little one will be able to talk and also what they can do so that they can help pick up on words instead of screaming. So this is a really great question because normally at around 12, 13 months, the screaming is actually quite normal for that developmental age group, especially if they don't have language just yet, or they're just like they're about to start speaking, they're getting ready for it. Screaming is a normal part of your little one's communication because they don't have language, so that's how they communicate to the world what they need. And it's great that you've been able to pick up on those cues that they only scream if they're tired or if they're hungry. So that's exactly what they're doing because they don't have that language yet. They don't know how to speak. Normally around 12 months, they'll start saying around 3 to 5 words consistently, but gestures do count as a part of those word counts. So if they can wave consistently hello or goodbye to you, that does count as a word. Some strategies you can use to help promote that language development to try to get them to speak is using simple sentences. I like to use this analogy a lot. If you're traveling abroad and someone who doesn't speak the same language as you and comes up to you and starts speaking in full sentences, you like I don't know about you, but for me, I would get pretty flustered. I wouldn't know what they're talking about. But if that same person came up to me and started speaking slowly, using very simple sentences, maybe a 1 or 2 worded sentence, and they're gesturing a lot, I would generally understand them a lot better than if they were to use a full sentence. So that is what we try to do with our little ones that is either just starting to speak or doesn't have language just yet, using very, very simple sentences, 1 or 2 word sentences, so that hopefully that way your little one can kind of pick up on those key words and then start repeating after you. So for example, if you're saying, um, do you want to eat, um, do you want to eat apples? That is a very long sentence for your little one who isn't speaking just yet. So just pick out the key words that you want. So instead of saying, do you want to eat apples, you could say, eat apples or want apples. So that is a very simple sentence. It gets straight to the point. And if you say it slowly and you gesture to the apples as you say, then it would be really a really good way for your little one to pick up the language as you're asking them if they want to eat a nice yummy apple. But that's one way of doing it. So really trying to deconstruct your sentences when you talk to them. Once they're able to use one-worded or two-worded sentences consistently, you can then move on to using 3 to 4 word sentences. And again, once they're able to form 3 to 4 word sentences, you move up to the full sentence after that. But go by increments, and really depends on your little one's stage. Also, if you're asking them a question, it's really important for you to stop and pause for 10 seconds. I don't know about you, but I kind of have a habit where I'll like ask a question and then I'll like rush to answer it for them. But I've tried really hard to wait 10 seconds. And if you think about it, 10 seconds is a very long time to kind of just stop and wait for a response. But with our little ones, all of our little ones under the age of around 3, they really do need that time to kind of process the words that you use, and then what you ask them, and then they have to process their response to you, which takes about 10 seconds. Whereas us as adults, we're pretty quick. Like if you ask me a question, I'll be able to answer you pretty much right away. So like if you think about like waiting 10 seconds, so like if I asked you, what did you do today? And you have to like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like that is a very long time to kind of just stand there and wait for your little one's response, but it is needed. And also this way, we're not rushing them to answer their question for them. It kind of makes them learn that like, hey, I don't need to talk because someone will talk on my behalf. Older siblings will do that a lot for their younger siblings. I mean, well intended. My older brother and sister talked to me a lot, but that didn't help me to speak. It just kind of hindered it a little bit. So they were very well intended, but siblings do that a lot if you have an older sibling at home. Other things you can do, like I think I mentioned it briefly before, is gestures. So while you are maybe using simple sentences or you're labeling, using gestures is a great way. So for example, if you want to say this is a pig, you get pig, and you can point to it. So now they have a visual and an audio representation of what this is, which is a pig. And that leads me to my next point. Labeling is a great way to introduce your little one to language. So all of these suggestions you can do in your everyday life, everyday routine. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need to go on the internet to look up anything. Just labeling anything at home. Again, keep the labels short, simple, and sweet, and to the point, because the more words you use, the more confusing it will be for them. So example, if your little one doesn't have any language, I wouldn't want to be saying, look at this big brown horse with yellow mane. I would just keep it to horse. If you're focusing on color, then I would say brown. If you're focusing on animal, like I said, the horse. If you're focusing on size, I would say big, or better example. If you're focusing on size, I would say big, small, dog, horse, right? So keep it one worded if you're labeling. Again, once they pick up language, once they're starting to speak, then you can say brown horse or small horse, stuff like that. So that was a really good question, thank you. Our next question comes from a parent who has a 19-month-old. They are babbling, but they're not able to form any words. They can sound out the word dada, but they're not directing the word to their dad per se. They are able to understand and will follow directions. And they can wave, and so they can gesture, they can pick up the ball. They've directed this concern to the pediatrician, but the pediatrician does not seem concerned. Pediatrician said as long as your little one understands what they're saying to them, that they shouldn't be worried too much. And parent is wondering if they should start looking into speech therapy for their little one, if it's a good idea to do it now, or if they should wait until their little one has reached 2 years, which is what the pediatrician recommended, and also some ways that they can help their little one talk or say a few words. So this is a pretty common question I get a lot from families, saying that they've directed their concern to the pediatrician. Pediatrician doesn't seem too worried and that they should wait. Now, while I respect those recommendations, I do believe that you should put them on the wait list. Now, if you live in Toronto, we have a great program called Early Abilities that is run through the city of Toronto. Now, they work with children under the age of 4, so before they hit school, and it is a free program that any family can access as long as they live within Toronto. So I would recommend you putting your little one on that list because those services usually have a 6-month waiting list, and um, any uh, any developmental stage between the 0 to 3, 6 months is quite a long time. Anything can happen for the better, or it could stay the same. So you don't want to wait until they're 2 years, because once they've hit 2 years and then you put your child's name on that list, you're gonna have to wait 6 months. So then at this point they'll be 2.5 before they are able to get assessed by one of the wonderful speech pathologist team there. I say 6 months, just because that's usually like the max time that you wait. But depending on when you sign up your child to be on the wait list, it could be as short as 3 months or 6 months. But if you put your little one on that wait list now, 6 months later they'll already be 2, and then they'll still get assessed. You'll have to get an assessment first by the therapist there, and then from there they will determine what would be more appropriate for your little one. So I would definitely give them a phone call and put your name on that list. I always say it's better to put your name on that list, because if 3 months or 6 months down the road your little one is all of a sudden exploding with language, and you feel like you don't need that service anymore, it's easy for you to be like, I'm so sorry, can you take my name off of the wait list, as opposed to waiting 6 months, nothing has happened, and now you have to wait another 6 months before you can finally see someone and get your little one assessed. So that is a very great question, and yes, I would put them on the list. The link to Early Abilities and to the communication checklist and every resource that I've mentioned in the video will be in the description. So please check that out. They have the phone number there. And I know the communication checklist comes in a multitude of languages as well. So you can either print it out if you have, or download it. And then you can, at every stage, you can kind of see where your little one is at on the checklist. Early Abilities did a really, really good job formulating that communication checklist. So check it out. If English is not your first language, then they have translated it into many, many different languages. So there is that. As for some kind of strategies and tips, everything I mentioned in the earlier question will be great for your little one as well, because he hasn't started talking yet. But also, because he's a little bit older and he's able to follow directions, asking him for help is another great way to not only involve him in your everyday routine and chores, but as you ask for help, you guys are working together, and then you can start labeling things for him, like maybe some action words like sleeping. Cooking is another great way to involve your little one. We have a bunch of cooking videos that have already been uploaded, and there will be more cooking videos as well. So in those videos, the cooking for caregiver, cooking with caregiver and me, that series really focuses on simple, easy recipes that you can cook at home with your little one, and you can start as early as 18 months because he is able to follow directions. It will get messy, but he can do the simple things like stirring, mixing, pouring, mashing, and those are some really good label words to use as well as you cook, or even labeling the ingredients. Again, using one worded labels like banana pasta. You can label the colors, like in the rainbow pasta that we had done, red, green, purple. So really use like the one worded labels, incorporate household chores, cooking, even pretend play is a really, really good way to introduce your little one to language. Um, they love pretending to be on the phone. I see it all the time. So pretending to be on the phone, having a conversation with him, even if all he does is babble. Babbling is another form of communication. It is the precursor to words. So just having pretend play conversations. You can pretend to have a picnic, and again, that's a great way to label. Another really good thing that I didn't mention and I forgot to mention in the previous question is books. Books is a great way to learn language while fostering their love for literacy. Now, using their favorite book, you can label all what you see in the illustration. Maybe like, look, house, or so. For example, this book right here is all about leaves. So I can label all of the pumpkins that I see here, all the apples. If you want, you can count the pumpkins and apples together. So you don't necessarily have to read word for word the book. You can expand, talk about the picture, count the pictures, ask them what they see. They can try to gesture for you as well. So those are some really great ways. Books that are repetitive in nature are great, because if you read them on a regular basis, the hope is that your little one can pick up on the language, the words that have been used over and over again, and they can kind of predict what comes next. So some really good examples of repetitive books that we like to use are Chicka Chicka Boom Boom and Brown Bear, What Do You See? So those are some really great books. There's many more, but those are just the two that popped into my head. So thank you so much for that question. Hopefully that answers it for you. Some other common questions that I usually get is around second languages. So if you are using a second language or your home language at home and you're trying to teach your little one English on top of that, um, that may or may not cause a slight delay in your little one's speech, but that's okay. Like we do encourage second languages and learning about second languages. Generally speaking, again, this is going to be very. It'll depend from child to child, but generally, we do encourage the use of second language. So some strategies you can use to kind of help promote learning two or more languages at home. If you have multiple people living with you, you can designate one person to speak one language and then another person to speak the other language. So a good example is my house growing up. I lived with my mom, my dad, and my two siblings. So at home, my mom and my dad would speak to me in Vietnamese growing up, whereas my brother and my sister spoke to me in English growing up. And they were doing that consistently. So I would know when I'm speaking to my mom or my dad, I'd have to speak in Vietnamese. Whereas if I was with my siblings, I would have to speak to them in English. And then that way I learned both languages at home, but I was able to use it depending on who I was talking to. If you don't want to go that route, another good way is to do it during your routine. So, for example, when you're inside the house, you would talk in your home language. But as soon as you were outside of your house, if you're taking a walk in the park, if you're going for a grocery run, then you would speak English, and as soon as you came back home, it would be back to your home language. Another really good way is through mealtime. So throughout the day, we would speak in like in your home language, but as soon as it was a mealtime, so breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you would speak in the second language or English, for example. So those are some really good ways to promote two languages, learning at the same time. Also, once they go to school into kindergarten, they pick up English pretty quickly as well. So you don't have to teach them English if you don't want to. And then another common question I get is about questions, and how to use questions. If it's a good idea to be asking your little one questions if they don't have language, and the answer to that is questions is a great tool to use when you're trying to teach your little one about language, trying to expand their vocabulary. So like I mentioned from the other questions, to use simple words if your little one is just starting to speak, or if they're not speaking quite yet, asking them simple 1-2 worded questions that they can either try to speak or use gestures is a great way. So for example, want apples is a question. They can nod, they can say no, they can point if they want to. So that is for the little ones that don't speak and you're trying to get them to talk. And when they start saying no or yes, then you can label it and saying yes to apples, or you saying no. So those are some really great ways. As your little one starts talking a lot more, you'll start to want to incorporate open-ended questions to really encourage them to talk. Try to get them to use simple sentences themselves. They will have grammatical errors, obviously, when they're younger. So sometimes they'll say things like, "Look plain up." So you'd be like, yeah, instead of being like, no, that's not how you say it, you would want to say, yes, look, the plane is up. So that would be how you would kind of naturally correct their sentence structure. But hopefully these answers some or most of your questions at home. Again, thank you so much for asking those questions. These were really, really good questions to ask, and very common as well. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us either through our Facebook message or our email. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye!